Pro Football Playbook, presented by the Pigskin Podcast Network. Your source for team news, draft needs, player profiles and rankings, full Senior Bowl, Combine, and NFL draft coverage. News, analysis, discussion. It's in the playbook. Now, here is your host, sports journalist Bill Alvstad, and featured analyst Keith Myers. Hey guys, welcome into the Pro Football Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with Keith Myers. We're going to talk NFL draft prospects today. Keith, defensive ends and edge rushers. How you doing?
Yeah, this is a fun group. This is like probably the deepest position in the draft. Just a lot of talent.
And heavy at the top.
Heavy at the top, but also heavy in the middle and in the bottom. There is just talent up and down the draft.
Yeah, well, what I meant was at the top, like rounds 1 through 3.
Mm-hmm.
We've probably got at least 12 to 14 prospects that are going to go, and I think that's that is pretty heavy for a normal draft. I mean, normally you're going to see maybe 4 or 5 defensive ends go in the first round, 4, 5, 6 defensive ends go in the second round. This could be a little bit more than that, and there's good quality up and down as well, and different types of defensive ends, edge rushers, guys that are smaller, maybe more of strong side linebacker-ish, 3-4 kind of guys. And you've got guys that are pretty stout. They're going to be 5 techs that might be able to slide into a 3 tech kind of role in the NFL. So interesting conversation today.
And that's one of the things that I think we should point out when we say edge rushers, because that's not a position you'll find on an NFL roster, because it varies from team to team. Edge rusher is, if you're playing a traditional 3-4, it would be your outside linebacker, and in a 4-3, it would be your defensive end. But nobody really plays those traditional straight up defenses anymore. Everyone's kind of a hybrid between the two. Okay, maybe not everyone, but it just feels that way.
Seemingly, yeah.
And so you have a lot of 5 tech defensive ends that slide into the 3 tech and play defensive tackle against the run. You have guys that play outside linebacker against the run, but then move up to defensive end.
And then you've just got specialists that come in on third down, and all they do is rush the passer.
Yeah, so there's so much overlap, and when trying to do defensive end as its own unique thing, well, then you have to differentiate between the 3-4 defensive ends that are the 280 pounds versus the 4-3 defensive ends, which can be 260 pounds,
or even 235 or 40.
Yeah, well, and it used to be those 235 pound were 4-3. Outside linebackers, still pass rushers, still guys that come up on the line. And so there's just so much overlap that we just call them all edge rushers. And that's been kind of a trend for about a decade now, to recognize that there's a lot of overlap between outside linebacker and defensive end, and go ahead and combine them. What you won't find, though, is weak side linebackers, guys that play off the line of scrimmage, drop into coverage, are more like a middle linebacker in terms of their responsibilities. This will be your strong side linebacker that comes up and plays on the line of scrimmage. When we're talking linebackers, or a 4-3 type guy where you're looking at your pass rushers. So it's
and there's different 4-3 guys. There's guys that are more stout that's setting the edge, and there's guys that are more like a Leo that operate on the weak side. So the cool thing about the conversation we just had is we've just got a whole bunch of players that'll fit right into that conversation, and we'll be able to kind of show what we're talking about. So let's start at the top, Keith. I'm very much interested to see who you value more out of the top 2 players. Yeah, and everyone knows who we're talking about.
Yep, Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan and Thibodeau out of the University of Oregon. These guys are generally considered 1-2 in the draft as far as talent, although you can throw in offensive tackle Ryan Neal as the other guy that fits in that top 3, maybe top 1. But those 2 guys, Thibodeau and Aiden Hutchinson, I think that Thibodeau is the more complete player. I think that he is just absolutely unblockable up at times. He can rush inside, he can rush outside. And his hand usage is good. He's so explosive. His first step is lightning quick, but it's not just quick without power. I mean, he's just absolutely the complete package as a pass rusher and as a guy that can also hold up against the run. Hutchinson is no slouch, and there's a reason he's the number 2 overall pick on my board. But I think he's just, a fraction of a number, a fraction of a fraction less than Kayvon Thibodeau as far as
they're just
athlete.
different. They're different players.
They really are.
I disagree with you.
I know you do.
I've spent some time looking at film with both these guys, and I've come away with the idea that I like Aiden Hutchinson better in the NFL as an NFL player on an NFL team. Now, Thibodeau is definitely a player, Keith, that you're familiar with, having living in the Northwest. You see some Thibodeau, and he's lean. He's kind of a lean build, got long limbs, can affect the pass rush. I mean, there's no question, and he's underrated defending the run. There's no question that he's going to be able to play a 5-tech in the NFL. He could also play a Leo as well and drop back into coverage as a strong side linebacker in a 3-4. I think he could do that, right?
He's also physical enough. He can slide into the 3-tech if you need him to. He can literally rush from anywhere. He can rush from anywhere.
I'm not sure that he could line up as a 3-tech without stunning. I don't know that yet.
He'd be a guy he's there. He's in the huddle.
Undersized for that.
He's there. I wouldn't line up in there all the time, but you could bring him up to the line of scrimmage.
Well, this is where Aiden Hutchinson has the diversity of scheme value for me, because Aiden Hutchinson is going to be a true 5-tech in the NFL that can slide into the 3-tech spot. You're not going to ask Aiden Hutchinson to really drop back into coverage a lot, depending on the team and the scheme. He's going to be asked to be up front, set the edge, rush the passer. And that's it.
Yeah, if you're asking Aiden Hutchinson to drop into coverage as one of the most elite pass rushers in college football coming into this draft, you probably aren't going to have a job for very long.
Well,
so yeah, I mean, this is a guy that should never be in coverage.
Well, there's one thing about Aiden Hutchinson when you watch him, Keith, is he's a tenacious lunch pail kind of man's man defensive end. Like he just is going to get after it. He reminds me of Terrell Suggs, like early on Terrell Suggs, where this guy's capable of maybe getting 15 to 16 sacks, having like 100 tackles and maybe 30, 35 tackles for loss, 5 forced fumbles. I mean, this guy's capable of doing it all from that position. Now, when I look at Kayvon Thibodeau, I see more of a specialist in the NFL, because when you look at his body, when you look at how he plays, when you look at his length, he's going to be asked to do different things in the NFL than I think Aiden Hutchinson's going to be asked to do.
And I think Aiden Hutchinson has more value that way. You're only talking about 7 pounds.
I understand that, but it's where they carry the weight. It's the way that they play. If you look at the tape between the two, they're just different players.
They are, and they're both elite. And I think
absolutely.
Let's not talk down about either one of them.
No. We're not talking down. We're just talking about in specific schemes in the NFL. I just believe Aiden Hutchinson has more ability to be scheme diverse than Kayvon Thibodeau does.
And see, I would say the exact opposite, because I would say that Aiden Hutchinson is going to be a 5-tech on a 4-3 team, and then you're just going to stick him there, and he's going to be awesome.
But I'm thinking that he can slide into the 3-tech, and I don't think that Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be asked to do that on a consistent basis in the NFL. And if he is, he's going to get hurt.
I think Kayvon Thibodeau, you're going to have him. He's going to be like Frank Clark with the Kansas City Chiefs and a few other players that.
Frank Clark was 285 pounds. I'm going to remind you.
Yes, but he was coming out, but he doesn't play at that in the NFL. He's playing at 260. And he literally comes, when he breaks the huddle, you don't know where he's going to line up. And he will line up and come from anywhere. And that's who Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be, whereas Aiden Hutchinson is going to line up at the 5-tech every single play.
The thing about Kayvon Thibodeau, too, is he's got the speed. He has a lot more speed than Aiden Hutchinson. Aiden Hutchinson's not bad. He runs like a 4.65, but Kayvon Thibodeau is going to run a 4.5 40 at 260 pounds, 6'5". I mean, that's intimidating.
That's impressive.
That's very impressive.
The other part that the reason why I put Thibodeau above Hutchinson is that Thibodeau didn't have a lot of help at Oregon. That Oregon defensive line was okay. The number 4 defensive end on my list. Board here is also at Michigan.
Yes.
Right. They had a
and
top
he looked
defensive,
tremendous too. Yeah.
One of our top, or not top, but high tier defensive tackles in this draft was from Michigan. You're not double teaming any of these guys, so it makes it really easy for them to show. Whereas Thibodeau was playing against double teams constantly and was winning. Teams would double team him, and it didn't matter.
that is an interesting point. And I will say that Aiden Hutchinson, keep in mind, Aiden Hutchinson played at Michigan against top flight talent in college football.
Oh, absolutely.
And when we talk about some of these other guys that we're going to talk about today, you got to look at the level of competition and keep that in mind. Because Aiden Hutchinson did it at the highest level and did it at the highest level against that sort of competition, as well as Kayvon Thibodeau as well.
Yeah. So we're talking about guys who, or we're talking about Ohio State and Penn State, and these were elite players that Aiden Hutchinson was dominating.
Whereas I will say this: I think Aiden Hutchinson is like one of those players in this draft that is probably least likely to bomb and to fail. And I'm not so convinced about Kayvon Thibodeau, only because of injury situation. I think he's more susceptible to injury, and I think that makes the difference for me. That little micro fraction that you said flipped it for you.
So small.
It flipped it for me.
It's such a small difference from one to the other. We're debating these two guys as if if one of them's going to be an all pro and the other one's going to be a draft bust. I think they're both fantastic players at the end.
I'm a little torn on the because I don't believe that most boards have George Carlofidus from Purdue as the number 3 overall guy. And I watched tape between him and David Ajabo from Michigan is the other Michigan player that you were talking about. And I like David Ajabo better. George Carlofidus from Purdue played against subpar competition and I thought was okay at that level of competition. Like nothing really completely popped for me. He's kind of like I mentioned lunch pail earlier, total lunch pail type player, just really gets after it, but he kind of cleans up a lot of stuff. If you really watch the tape, he's cleaning up, like he's not initiating.
He's not dominating. He is getting a lot of stats because other people get pressure and they push at them.
There's great players in the NFL that make a great living at being defensive ends by being cleanup guys. Great players that make the Pro Bowl because they get numbers, but they're not guys that take on double teams. They're not guys that make a difference, at the end of games when they need to make a play and so forth. I'm not sure if George is that guy. I'm just not convinced.
Yeah, I think someone's going to talk themselves into taking him as a top 10 pick, and I think they're going to end up disappointed. Because if I'm taking a guy in the top 10, I want them to be explosive. I want them to be absolutely dominant. And Carlofidus,
I have Drake Jackson and David Ajabo on my list above him.
Interesting. So Drake Jackson is an interesting one for you to have above him because Consensus Big Board at NFL Mock Draft Database has him way down at 32.
And I don't believe that that's the case. He's 250 pounds, so he's going to be a little smaller. Maybe a strong side linebacker, 3-4 linebacker in the NFL. Drake Jackson, so he's going to be asked to do a lot of different things. Similar to like Thibodeau that you mentioned earlier, and he does have the speed to do that. He's 6'4", 250, runs a 4.50, and he's really long. When you look at Drake Jackson, he really does a lot. He has got great bend. He really does get after the quarterback in that way, and he also can set the edge for you as well. And I think George Carlofidus is a guy at 275 pounds, runs a 4.7 40 at 6'4". He's got the stocky build. He's got the big, huge legs. he's like a 5 tech that needs to put on just a little bit of weight to come in and slip inside for you on third downs. And I'm just not so convinced with him.
I think Carlofidus does have that 3-4 defensive end ability, and that's going to be marketable. It's going to be something that teams are going to look at, because finding 3-4 defensive ends is really hard, because now you need guys that are 275 to 280. That can do the different things that you need them to do.
Keith.
And I think he is going to be coveted by the teams that play a 3-4 in the NFL. And I think, because that's really where I've got him is there. Because he's not, you draft him in a 4-3. He's your 5 tech, maybe a guy that can slide inside as a 3 tech, but he is, you can find guys like that later.
But he's not as strong. He's not as strong as like an Aiden Hutchinson. So when you look at him and you look at him play, he's not throwing guys off of him like a Frank Clark. He's not pushing guys out of the way to make a play. He's just seemingly just slightly undersized for what he's trying to do. But I didn't want to gloss over a guy like David Ajabo. When you look at the Michigan tape and you go look at Aiden Hutchinson, oftentimes you're also looking at a guy like David Ajabo that's right there as well at the same time.
When I went to go watch Aiden Hutchinson tape, I ended up watching David Ajabo and then being like, I'm like, wow, when this kid comes out, because he just, that first step and that initial power on the first like burst. He's a smaller guy, but he has that just like, just intense burst. And then he just turns that speed into power so effectively. I was looking at him, I'm like, wow, when that kid comes out, he's going to be high on draft boards. And then I went and looked, I'm like, oh yeah, he's also on this draft. So he's going to be high on draft boards. Yeah. I think he's a top 10 pick. I do think. And that's what we were talking about before, with this being a really loaded at the top of the draft class at defensive end. We've just mentioned 4 guys that I think are in the top 10 of the draft. Carlofidus might drop a little bit, because
I think so. As it goes on and you see the testing at the combine and so forth, I'm not sure. He still might be a top 10 guy, but I think a couple of guys end up moving in front of him. But that's just me.
I will say that Drake Jackson, who you mentioned out of USC, is one of my favorite defensive ends, in that his ability to turn the corner and get from outside and then get in, with his bend
and the length.
Yep, the length and his bend, he gets. It's not just speed; it's the ability to get leverage on the outside, lean in on the offensive tackle, so that you can stay outside of his hips and get around that corner. Jackson does that really, really well.
Yeah, it's funny. I only wrote 2 words for each, or 1 word for each player. David Ajabo, Drake Jackson. David Ajabo, I just wrote speed. And when I went to look at his guesstimated 40 time, they have him at a 4.62. I think he's faster than that. At least he shows the burst, the quick area quickness, and all that kind of stuff. He's, maybe that's all he needs in the NFL. A straight line speed, sideline to sideline is going to be a factor. And 4.62 will get it done in the NFL, but he looks more like a 4.5 guy to me. The burst and the ability to just go from 0 to 60 in like a split second is just
when
crazy.
you get to the combine, for a lot of positions, especially like defensive end and defensive tackle, I don't care about a 40 time. I care about the 10-yard
splits
of the 40 time, because it doesn't matter to me how quickly they get 40 yards downfield. It matters how quickly they can get that first 10. And I think Ajabo's first 10 is going to be elite, and his over at the end of the 40 down, at the end of the run, it's going to be fairly average. But that first 10, which is all that matters, is his ability to get upfield quickly.
And that agility, that broad jump, that,
that was where Ajabo's gonna really perform well and really show. Yeah. And I think that Jackson's got some straight line speed. He's a guy that can run down running backs from behind and make plays sideline to sideline. But I don't know if he has the power.
He doesn't have the burst either.
He to me does not look like a guy who's going to ever win with a bull rush. If he can't get around the corner on you, he's not getting there. But I like his ability, his bend, and his ability to get leverage and get around the corner. I think he does a really good job of that. And that's why I've got him as a first round grade as well.
All right. So I'm interested. I've kind of been throwing these names out. Why don't you throw the next few names out?
So the next few names, I mean, there's like a group after Jackson. A
bunch of second round guys.
Yeah, there's a bunch of second round guys. I can give you three that I honestly don't know which one I like more. Kingsley Inagbar, Myjai Sanders, and Jermaine Johnson. Those three guys are all they're ranked on my board right now, like right next to each other, and that you could interchange them.
Which ones was it? Sanders,
Jermaine Johnson, and Kingsley Inagbar.
Inagbari.
Bari. Is that how it's? You know what? Sure.
I had to look that up too. And he goes by the nickname JJ. I'm just letting you know. We got to call them by their names that they like to be called by.
Kingsley Inagbare.
Yeah, so throw out the Kingsley.
And it's JJ because
just call him JJ.
Okay, but not Jermaine Johnson. We don't call him JJ because that would make sense. But apparently, we're just not going to do that.
Exactly.
So yes. Okay. Anyway, so this group, like I said, they're my evaluation.
My J is actually my J. Yeah, my J Sanders. Yes.
I kind of like JJ Kingsley Inagbare because
he did that really well.
He is a guy at South Carolina, played against some really, really high end talent in the SEC. There's some great offensive tackles in the SEC, and Inagbare managed to show and flash like high end talent. He also didn't have much help on that line. And so he's probably my favorite of the three. But when you go through and you watch Sanders out of Cincinnati, he flashes too and actually looks really impressive. And it had a lot to do with why that defense was able to shut some teams down and keep them winning and into that
competition situation with him.
It's why I put Inagbare ahead of him.
Yeah,
because Inagbare played against the highest level.
Well, if you
Sanders did not.
Here's what you do when you look at the film of Sanders is you really got to just step back and go, okay, he's 255, 6'5", runs a 4.68. So he's kind of on the smaller side, and he still doesn't have the great speed that some of those other undersized players might have. And when you look at him, Keith, he looks like a safety. Like he does not look like a very defensive
lean.
end. Yeah. And so he looks like a safety or a really lean linebacker. And so when that translates to the NFL, I'm just not sure where NFL personnel guys and coaches think they're going to scheme him up, And so to me, even though he's got that talent, you've got to figure out where you're going to put him, because you can't necessarily put him as a guy that's going to be able to set the edge. You can't slide him inside. You're really talking about having him be a 3-4 style linebacker in the NFL. Yeah. And so you've got to make sure that he's got those abilities to drop back into coverage and so forth. You're going to want to see that at the combine and maybe the Senior Bowl.
Well, I wouldn't say a 3-4 outside linebacker. I would do a 4-3 outside linebacker.
Okay, fair enough. Strong side linebacker then.
Yeah. So he's rushing the passer. He's doing those things, but he's doing it with speed from outside. The other player which kind of came to mind was guy that played for the Eagles, the Seahawks, and Jacksonville over his career, Chris Clemons, who was very much undersized, and it didn't matter. I mean, he wasn't great against the run.
But Chris Clemons, didn't he have like a 4.5 or 4.45 40 or something like that?
I don't remember. I just remember watching him rush off the edge, and he was just so quick around the corner.
Quick first step.
But undersized, it didn't matter when he was rushing the passer that he was undersized. But at the same time, he was never a great run defender. So
I got the same sort of feeling with Jermaine Johnson. when I watched him, is he had the similar body type, although a little larger at 262, 6'5", a little longer, but he just had that strong side linebacker, strong safety vibe to me.
I wouldn't say strong safety, and I'm not sure he's quick enough for that.
I didn't know. I just looked at his body style and the way that he played on the field, and it just looked to me like he wasn't going to be strong enough to be able to take on tackles or double teams in the NFL.
But a lot of like
get washed out.
Teams like San Francisco and Dallas this year, and the Chargers, the way they play their strong side linebacker, where he's up on the line of scrimmage, setting the edge against the run, and essentially kind of being a fifth defensive lineman because he actually is on the line of scrimmage for most plays. I thought that would be a good fit for him because he's outside wide enough.
Yes, like a 9 type of a deal.
Yeah, he's outside wide enough that he's not going to get. He's not the point of attack guy. He's an edge setter that forces the run back in. But if it's not a run, he can use that speed, that burst to just
I think
get
that
around.
He would still be susceptible to like a tight end and a tackle double teaming him and washing him out, though.
Yeah, I mean that's
so
absolutely.
One other player that I want to talk about, and then we can maybe throw out some names. A player that we talked about last week when we talked about interior defensive tackles, Trayvon Walker out of Georgia. I kind of wanted to throw him in this list as well.
Yeah.
6'5", 275, runs a 4.6 40. So to me, the 4.6 40 with that player makes the difference because now all of a sudden he's really a guy that you could bring in at the 5 tech almost full time, slide him in on passing downs.
See, I'm interested where you got the 4.6 40 for because what I know we use different services for this, and until the combine, it's estimated anyway. But I've got 4.79 for.
Yeah, I know that. I know that you do, and I know where you got that. But where did I get this number? I pulled that off of Walter Football, I believe.
Okay.
Which none of them are dependable right now.
Yeah, until we get to the combine next month.
That may have been a number that I pulled that he ran at a Nike camp between high school and freshman year of college when he was a little bit more undersized.
Yep, I like him as in the same way that Carlofidus. When I talk about him as a 3-4 outside. Or 3-4 defensive end, where you've got an outside linebacker outside and you got a nose tackle inside of you, and you're playing, in that B gap between the tackle and the guard. I like Trayvon Walker in that spot because I think he is, he's quick enough and strong enough to play that role. And at 275,
if he can even sniff into the 4.6s at like a 3 tech. In the NFL. Oh my goodness. He could really be a disruptor. He could kind of be an undervalued guy. I think I have like a second round grade on him. Yeah. Just based on that's where
I've got him at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, as a 3 tech defensive tackle rushing and then or a 5 tech, I really think like in a 3-4, you stick him at the 5 tech and let him be your defensive end there. And you'll be happy. I really think so. I think he has a lot of upside in that role. But again, there's so many teams now play a hybrid of a 3-4 versus 4-3, and so you kind of have to have that scheme versatility and be able to do both. There's no such thing as a just a 3-4 defensive end. You have to be able to do some of the 4-3 defensive tackle stuff, and I think Walker absolutely can.
So I'll just throw out one more name because we're going to run out of time, and maybe you can throw one out. But a guy that I'm watching, that I'm paying attention to, that I know for a fact will probably end up rising up boards, depending on his interview process and so forth, because I understand there might be some off-field stuff. Zach Harrison out of Ohio State. And the reason I brought up Zach Harrison is because he's 6'5" and is 270 pounds. But is reportedly runs a 4.47 40 and has a 38-inch vertical. So if that guy goes into the combine with those numbers and he can flash that stuff, and people go back and revisit the film, and see some of that on tape.
His film is nice.
That guy could be a riser.
Yep. And then I'll throw out, of course, I was hoping you were throwing out this guy because I can't pronounce his name. Arnold Epiceti.
Yeah. Okay. That's pretty.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
We'll go with that.
Ebby Ketty.
Out of Penn State, and he's 6'3", so he's a couple inches shorter than some of the guys we talked about. 256. He's not fast, but he's quick, and I think he's a guy that I wouldn't put him as an outside linebacker. I would make sure that you line him up as the Leo, the 7 tech, defensive end. But I think he has a lot of upside to just be a solid pass rusher at the next level. Nice.
Yeah, we talked about a lot of guys, and there's, if you really go and take the deep dive and you look at quite a bit of the other players that you find on big boards all over the place, you'll be able to go and watch some tape and some highlights on YouTube, whatever you guys have access to out there. And you'll see that this draft has players, into the 5th, 6th round that still can provide the team some really nice depth in the rotation in a lot of different spots.
We were 10 people deep at the position, and we were barely into the 3rd round.
Yeah. I know, it's fun. Draft's so much fun.
Yep. And this position is really strong at the top. It's really deep in the middle and at the end. If you need a pass rusher, or just overall, if you need an edge player, this is a good draft to need an edge player, because there's a lot of really nice ones.
Yeah, and it's drafts like this too, where you get a lot of offensive linemen, a lot of defensive linemen, right, and some skill position players. So you get like 3 or 4 or 5 quarterbacks off the board, and between the 1st and the 2nd round, these guys. So there's a ton of position groups that are going to be available that have barely been picked over at all into the 2nd and 3rd round in this draft, and so there's going to be a lot of value there for teams that are patient. So, okay, let's get out of here for today. Thanks, Keith. All right. Follow Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. I'm at Alvstad NFL. You can find the show at PF_Playbook. Find us on your favorite podcast platform and YouTube channel, and please subscribe. That would be awesome. So until next time, see you guys. Thanks for listening to the Pro Football Playbook Podcast. Follow Keith at Myers NFL. Bill is at Alvstad NFL. The show is at PF_Playbook. Listen and subscribe on your favorite podcast app or YouTube, and at our website, profootballplaybook.co.